Hey builders, on the 30th of September 2022, Solana had another outage. They've just released their outage report, so we're going to deep dive into that and figure out WTF happened. So this is the 6th outage or congestion period for Solana this year. And what Solana does is release an outage report. Now this usually comes out a week after the outage, and it goes into details about what caused it, what was the impact, and the timeline of events. So for this incident that happened on the 30th of September, the Solana mainnet beta cluster halted when the network was unable to recover from a fork caused by a bug in the consensus algorithm. This outage was caused by a single validator operator who was running two nodes in a high availability configuration. Both of these nodes were creating duplicate blocks on the network. Solana network was able to run for 24 hours. However, when we got to slot 221, a bug in the fork selection logic prevented the cluster from achieving consensus. As usual for these outages, the Solana validators get together on Discord. They figure out what the problem is over several hours, and then they identified the bug. Solana Labs team created a software update. The validators pushed that out. And then the Solana validators restarted the network. After the outage occurred, one of the Solana validators did a great video explaining on a technical level exactly what happened. So let's cut over to Lane and see what he has to say.
Hi everyone, my name is Michael from Lane. We're a Solana validator. What happened on Friday is a little bit different. There was a validator that had been misconfigured in a sense. And specifically what happened is that this validator appears to have been running on two servers simultaneously. The theory that most people seem to have is that this was a failed failover setup. So what happens is that if your validator crashes, you want to minimize downtime. So what some operators do is they have two servers, and what they'll do is that when one crashes, the second one automatically takes over. Now, it's important in that scenario that only one is running at a time, of course. Somehow, the theory, and this is speculation, is that this was somehow a failed setup where both were running at the same time. So what happened on Friday is that validator C, the offending validator, in the first slot of their group of 4, they produced 2 blocks, purple and yellow, and the next validator, G, in this case, took the first block produced and took the purple block because they only saw one of them. So they didn't realize it was a duplicate, and they built a fork off of that. A lot of the rest of the cluster did what validator D did in this scenario. So they saw that this is a duplicate. They said, no, I'm not going to use this duplicate, and I'm going to build off slot 4, the previous leader's last block. So that's green in this visualization. But what happened is that at least 52%, that's the threshold, voted for the fork that G built off that first duplicate block. Now the problem is, and this is a very obscure bug that occurred in the Solana source code, that the validators can switch back to another fork, and this is how forks are resolved normally. But when a validator in their code checks to switch to another fork, one of the conditions is that the ancestor slot of that fork can't be a duplicate. So what happened here is that the winning fork, the purple fork, was built off slot 5, block 5, but that is a duplicate block. So the validator tried to switch to block 5, but the source code is saying, hang on, you're not allowed to do that. And these validators were stuck in this perpetual loop of saying, our fork is the wrong fork, we want to switch to the other fork, but we can't. And as a result, neither of these forks were able to achieve a supermajority, which is 66.6% of stake, because that is the amount required for consensus. That led to this scenario where we had these two forks, and the network didn't crash, the validators didn't stop, they kept producing blocks. And the forks kept growing longer and longer and longer because they weren't able to resolve them. And because none of the forks were, you weren't getting that 66% to move past slot 5, or slot 4 actually in this case, nothing was being finalized, so none of those transactions were confirmed. And initially there was hope that possibly by restarting the validators we could kind of force them to switch to the heavier fork. So some operators tried this, and also just trying to understand what was actually happening at the time in the moment. So for about 2 or 3 hours, this is what the validator operators were doing, is trying to understand what was happening and can it be resolved. Eventually it became clear that the only resolution would be to essentially restart with a hard fork at that duplicate slot, which in this graphic is slot 5. So that's what happened in the end.
So massive thanks to Michael from Lane for that super deep dive technical explanation of the outage. I'll include the link to his YouTube video down below. So just to put this outage in a little context, let's visit the Solana Builders blog at solana.blog. Scroll down to the outage report post. And then scroll all the way down. We've collated all the outages or downtimes reported at status.solana.com. Starting back in April 2021 when the data was collected. So we get to the first outage that was reported on Solana. This was in the middle of September 2021. This was caused by the Grape IDO. There were a lot of bots spamming the Solana network, trying to get a good price for the initial DEX offering. So this first outage lasted for 17 hours and 56 minutes and was basically the start of the Solana issues with spam attacks. So we get to January 2022. In this month, at the start of the year, there was 2 weeks of just massive degradation across Solana. This also was caused by bots spamming the network. So we scroll down to April, 3 months later, at the end of April and the start of May, there were 2 outages, again caused by bot spam. I believe this was for bidding on candy machine auctions. 2 hours and 42 minutes is the outage reported in April. And then at the start of May, there was another outage, 5 hours, 31 minutes. As per my previous post, I talked about the Solana network upgrades. So there's 3 main upgrades that Solana devs have been working on to fix massive spam and bot attacks to the Solana network, causing instability issues. The first one is Quick, stake-weighted QoS, and fee markets. So these 3 big features that they've partially rolled out on Solana are designed to fix a lot of the bot instability issues. So heading back over to the Solana status and downtime results, pretty much all of the outages that were reported from the IDO to candy machine bids, all of these bot attacks should be fixed by these 3 big upgrades that Solana have been working on. So anytime you sort of see a bug that's not related to spam attacks is actually really good. That means that the big upgrades that Solana have been working on seem to be working in relation to spam attacks. So heading over to June 2022, there was 4 hour and 10 minute outage. This was not related to spam attacks. This was durable nonce transmission bug. Again, this was fixed in a software update and rolled out. Hasn't been seen since. Finally, the recent outage at the start of October, just a week ago. Again, this is a consensus bug, so not related to NFT spam attacks or anything that's happened previously. So the good news is that the Solana upgrade work does seem to be stabilizing the network. However, there are random bugs that do affect the Solana network. Solana is a young network that's still in beta. It's 2 years old. However, I just wanted to say that every time there's a outage, you basically lose trust with a lot of builders building on Solana. You really need to get on top of all the bugs that are randomly affecting Solana network stability. Of course, the Solana devs are working on that. So we should really be tracking the mean time between failures of Solana to track stability. Prior to the outage in early October, there were 4 months of pretty much smooth sailing with Solana. It was very stable. All the NFT mints were going through without any issues. So now that they've fixed the issue at the start of October, they know what it is, they've pushed out a software update. Fingers crossed there's stability on the Solana network.
Please.
So having a 7-hour outage is not good. It's not good for builders building businesses on the Solana blockchain. It's not good for users who are trying to use Solana for NFTs, for gaming, and for DeFi. But hopefully with the 3 big upgrades that Solana have been working on,
we are going to make it.
Well, that ends the video today. Make sure you check out Michael from Lane's technical explanation and deep dive that runs for half an hour on what happened with the Solana outage. Also, Solana just recently celebrated their 100 billionth transaction. Please check the video I did last week that goes through details about seeing exactly what those transactions are made out of. I will be at the Jump Hacker House running on the 1st through to the 3rd of November in Lisbon, Portugal. I'll also be at Breakpoint from the 4th through to the 7th in Lisbon. I hope to see you there. If not, keep building.